Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nvidia founder and CEO, Jen-Hsun Huang.
GeForce gamers, welcome! Are you guys ready? All right, let's get started. PC gaming is thriving and growing. There are now 200 million GeForce gamers all over the world. In the last 4 years alone, Steam gamers grew 4x. That is spectacular growth. One of the reasons why PC gaming is growing so fast is because the technology keeps evolving. It's an open platform. Developers keep coming up with greater and greater production value. The special effects that we add to the games are more and more interesting, and the technology keeps advancing. From shaders to higher resolution to HDR, and now we're moving into VR. In just the last 5 years, technology has increased in capability by a factor of 10. This ability to innovate and continuously evolve the PC platform is one of the reasons why PC gaming is so vibrant. Another reason, the different ways that developers and game makers continue to innovate on ways you play. Starting with first-person shooters, we moved to real-time strategy games, and now we have these amazing mobile games. Esports has become one of the major phenomenons in entertainment. There is no question in my mind this is going to become the largest sport on the planet. Today, there are 100 million mobile gamers. That doesn't even count all the people that spectate. Just as you know, not only is it fun to play, it's fun to watch. The number of people who watch other people play video games on YouTube and Twitch has now reached 600 million. 600 million, growing 50% a year. PC gaming is vibrant. PC gaming is thriving thanks to all of you. And that's what drives us. Our mission is to serve you. We dedicate ourselves to creating the world's most advanced gaming platforms. 9 months ago, we revealed Pascal, the most advanced GPU we've ever built, the best graphics processor the world's ever seen, and the results have been fantastic. Today, we're announcing that it is going to be $100 more affordable, so that more of you can enjoy the world's best graphics card. Several months after we announced the world's best gaming card, a giant leap from anything that the world's ever seen, we introduced the Titan X. Titan X is the best graphics card money can buy. It's for people who just absolutely need to have the best. They want the best, they need the best, the resolution of the monitor is the absolute highest, and they have 2 or 3 of those monitors. And today, there are going to be 5 lucky winners in the audience. So, as it turns out, there's now a black light that's shining on all of you. If you could hold out your card, and it says for the win, FTW. Who's got an FTW? Stand up. FTW, FTW, FTW. Okay, you guys, you have just won a brand new Titan X, the best graphics card money can buy. All right, I got some other things I got to tell you. So as you guys know, that one of our goals is to create cinematic graphics in real time. When you take a look at movies today, it's not just computer graphics, shaders, and geometry, and lighting and shadows. In order to make the cinematic experience realistic, it has to obey the laws of physics. Before you render it, you have to simulate the world. Simulation, physics simulation, environmental simulation, and computer graphics rendering go hand in hand. In order to deliver that experience, in order to create the type of images that you see, supercomputers are used to simulate the physics of the environment, and then using the same clusters, massive supercomputers, they render each and every pixel slowly and meticulously so that it generates these beautiful cinematic imageries. Well, we've been challenged to try to make this in real time for quite a long time. And one of the things that inspires us is to create this experience so that you can enjoy it in an interactive video game. And that is the soul, that's the reason why we created the Nvidia GameWorks studio. Over the last, coming up on 10 years, we've dedicated some 500 engineering years to create the world's most advanced real-time special effects engine. It basically broken down into three major categories. The first category, of course, is rendering. It's about lighting, it's about shadows, volumetric lighting, advanced lighting techniques, and shadows, all kinds of interesting shadow effects, because as you guys know, rendering shadows is really complicated, and without shadows, you simply don't have that sensation, that feeling that it looks real. Soft shadows, contact hardening shadows, self-casting shadows, your hair casts shadows on all the other strands of hair. When you look at grass, grass is rendering, not only is it green and it's waving in the wind, it's also casting shadows on itself. We also want to create the sense of photorealism using a technique called global illumination. With Pascal, we introduced the idea of simultaneous multi-projection, the ability to render into every single direction, 6 different directions at the same time. That ability allows us to create a type of global illumination effect acceleration called voxel-based GI, VXGI. We also use that technique for voxel-based ambient occlusion. All of those advanced rendering techniques are embodied inside our rendering engine. We also created the world's most advanced real-time simulation engine. They're particle systems, they're fluid systems, systems that allows you to simulate rigid bodies, simulation engines that allows you to simulate cloth, hair, turf. And all of those techniques, as you can see, unifies both the simulation, the physics simulation of it, as well as the rendering part of it. We combined it into one single engine so that we can create these type of special effects that you guys see in cinematic films. The amount of computation necessary to do so is really quite extraordinary. In fact, it's a supercomputing problem. And that's one of the reasons why these film studios use large clusters of supercomputers to render the film. It is the single most expensive thing they do. It takes hours to render each frame, and it takes solid years in order to create the entire film. Animating it, rendering it, simulating it, making it look beautiful, of course, and of course telling the story is incredibly computationally intensive. And now we're going to take the whole thing into VR. Well, when you go into virtual reality, you want a sense that everything is behaving according to the laws of physics. When you touch something, there should be a sense of collision detection. When you use water, you should see that it's spewing and flowing and adhering, if necessary, if appropriate, to different surfaces. Smoke should behave like smoke, fire should behave like fire. In order to put all of that into VR, an enormous amount of computation is necessary. Well, we've been developing this engine now for quite a long time. It's been incorporated into major game engines all over the world. Today, we're announcing something really, really important. This body of work, representing 500 engineering years in our company, today is available in DX12. DX12 gives us the opportunity to put this engine in the hands of developers all over the world, and it'll run on any platform that is DX12 compatible. If it has a credible DX12 system, this engine will now run on it. By unifying rendering, simulation in VR, and putting it on every DX12 platform, we hope that we can lift and we hope that we can inspire future games like you've never seen before. I want to thank all the engineers that worked so hard to make this possible. Thank you. We also introduced 2 updates. As you saw earlier in the cinematic images, rendering water is really, really hard. Water is made up of a whole bunch of molecules. Molecules interact with each other. Sometimes it's more viscous, sometimes it's more liquid. It flows, it interacts with objects, things boil on top of it. And as you know, water is really, really beautiful, and it's very hard to do. The technique used for doing that is called smooth particle hydrodynamics. Basically, every single molecule, depending on the size that we choose, and the size that we choose would allow you to enjoy it more realistically or otherwise. The size that we choose would interact with all of the other water molecules around it. And it sloshes around, things float on top of it, and heavy things will sink to the bottom, and light things will float on top. And every time you use it, if you simulate it properly, your video game comes alive. You basically have a pool of water in front of you. For viscous liquids, it's a great algorithm. And it's the same algorithm that you see people use in films. For expanding gases, we use a slightly different algorithm. There we use an adaptive, sparse voxel grid in order to simulate the smoke or flames. And each one of these little voxels will contain some fuel. And that fuel, the voxel would be moving in a particular direction. There might be some pressure element associated with it, whether the gas is expanding very quickly. Maybe it's fire, maybe it's smoke. There's a shadow element associated with that voxel. As you can see, these are very complicated algorithms that we now have to simulate in order to deliver a real-time experience completely in real time, simulate the physics, and then rendering it beautifully so that we can enjoy it while we interact with all the characters and the environment around us. And so why don't we take a look at that? The first one that we'll look at is smooth particle hydrodynamics. And, well, let's see. This is all completely in real time, you guys, and it's just running in DX12 and is running on top of one of our GPUs, our Pascal GPUs. You could drop whatever you want into it, and if it's heavy, it sinks to the bottom. If it's soft, it floats to the top. It could be foamy, it could be made of wood, it could be made of plastic. We could squirt more water into it. Mm-hmm. And after we simulate it using a supercomputing algorithm called SPH, we can then render it. And look how beautiful it is. Ah. And we let it out. Okay? All right, so first, SPH, fluid simulation, liquid simulation. Now let's take a look at smoke. Well, smoke is hard. Now what you're looking at here is adaptive voxel grid simulator. And this is a fire that is inside an Unreal Engine. And notice the fire is hot on the bottom and it turns into smoke. Some of the things that you're looking at with the smoke is really quite exciting. It's never been done before. This is smoke that's doing self-shadowing. And that's why when the smoke goes up, it just doesn't turn gray, but you could see the soft shadows, and it just, even makes smoke look beautiful. And because everything is completely real time, it's interacting with the environment, and you can see that it's lighting properly in this factory. In fact, the fire is a living, breathing fire, and so you would expect that if you were to, throw something at it. Look at that. I could do that all day. That's a whole game all by itself. And notice these gigantic bullets. When it hits that plate in the back, it collides, and it behaves according to the laws of physics, and we can make that giant plate heavy, and so that it's harder to make it move, or we can make it lighter so that it moves more easily. And everything is all lit properly. And the material that is on top of it looks like real wonderfully, beautifully shaded material. And the fire is completely interacting with it. And so why don't we shoot one more into it, and let's do a bullet time or something. What do you guys think about that? That's absolutely incredible. This is where supercomputing meets computer graphics. Now, the thing that's really, really quite special, and the reason why it's taken us so long to make this possible, is because the GPU now has to do simulation a little bit, computer graphics a little bit, simulation a little bit, computer graphics a little bit, and we now have to unify rendering and simulation into one application. This is now running on top of DX12, and DX12 running on top of a Pascal GPU using the DX12 architecture of asynchronous compute allows us to now interleave computer graphics and computation into one workload. As a result, we can do rendering, and all of the work that we've done with advanced rendering and all of the work that we've done with physics simulation can now come together on top of one engine, and we can deliver this result and this effect all completely through DX12 on, in this case, what you saw earlier was Unreal Engine 4. All of this has now been put in place so that game developers can take advantage of it. This is just a giant leap for interactive graphics. This is a giant leap for video games. And today, we're putting it all together and releasing it into the world called GameWorks DX12, running on top of DX12 GPUs. It's time. We've been working quite hard, and I think it's time. Are you guys ready? Are you ready? Well, it's time for something new. It's definitely time for something new. Something that's 35% faster than a GTX 1080, the world's #1 gaming graphics card. Something new that is faster than Titan X. Let's call it the ultimate GeForce. Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Leaps tall buildings with a single bound. Ladies and gentlemen, let's run it. Ladies and gentlemen, the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. The ultimate GeForce, the 1080 Ti, 3,584 CUDA cores, 11 gigabytes of frame buffer memory, 11 gigabits per second, nearly 500 gigabytes per second of frame buffer bandwidth with the new G5X memory, the new 1080 Ti, the ultimate GeForce. Well, let's take a look at this. Why 11 gigabytes of frame buffer? Well, every generation, our frame buffers keep getting larger, and the reason for that is because games are getting better. Games are getting more beautiful. The games are getting richer. Textures are getting larger. Worlds are getting larger. Resolution is getting higher. The number of render buffer is increasing. The special effects is growing. Year after year after year, the video games just getting more and more beautiful. And so this year, in order to introduce the next generation high-end, so that you're ready to enjoy video games with next generation games, next generation monitors, we introduced the 1080 Ti with 11 gigabytes of memory. Now, when you take a look at history, it would suggest that very shortly we're going to need 11 gigabytes. These are some examples of games that we've seen over the years. You've got Total War, you've got Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and year after year after year dissects. Watch Dogs 2. Watch Dogs 2 is nearly 8 gigabytes all by itself today. At 5K, that would be nearly 11 gigabytes. And that gives you a sense of one of the reasons why we decided to put so much memory into this new graphics card. The second question is, how did it get so fast? How is it possible that out of the box, 1080 Ti is 35% faster than 1080? Such a huge leap from before. How is it possible that 1080 Ti out of the box is faster than a Titan X? Well, one of the reasons is because we've been working on refining all of the software on top of our GPUs, but mostly because the frame buffer is so high performance. The 1080 Ti, the raw bandwidth of the frame buffer is nearly 500 gigabytes per second. It is incredibly fast. 11 gigabits per second, G5X, brand new memories, just available now. However, there are two techniques that we use, two architectural capabilities inside Pascal that has made the performance unreasonably high. A lot of people have asked us, how is it possible that Pascal is so performant? Well, there were two technologies we invented to amplify the bandwidth even further. The first is compression technology. When we render into the frame buffer, we render it in a compressed way. And so as a result, every single pixel is represented by fewer number of bits, and there are many, many pixels that we're rendering, and if it's represented by a fewer number of bits because we compressed it, then it's effectively the same as if the bandwidth of the frame buffer has been boosted. The second technique is called tiling. This is the first time we've ever talked about this brand new capability of rendering. Basically what we do is that we take the frame buffer, just take the screen, and we break it up into a whole bunch of small tiles. And whenever we render into that tile, the geometry, and as you know, when you're rendering three-dimensional graphics, the reason why it looks 3D is because objects that are further away are occluded. And so likely what happened is as we're drawing into it, the pixels are rendered over and over again. And when you have translucency and when you have smoke or atmosphere effects or special lighting effects, that pixel is rendered many times. It's in fact read back several times and blended with the next pixel as it's written back into the frame buffer. Now, if we could figure out a way to put all of that on chip, then we can render at a much higher rate. And the reason for that is because the clock speed of the chip is over 1.5 gigahertz, whereas the frame buffer is limited in bandwidth. And so we could do that on chip with a tiling cache. The tiling cache made it possible for us to boost our bandwidth even further. And it depends on what application we're rendering, but if there's a lot of translucencies or a lot of smoke or a lot of alpha blending, where the depth complexity is very high, then the tiling cache works incredibly well. We've effectively, between the bandwidth, compression, and tiling cache, effectively more than doubled the raw bandwidth that we see from already a super, super fast memory. Now let's take a look at 1080 Ti in action. But before, let me just describe to you what we're going to show you. Last year in May, with the launch of the 1080, we used this character study from Epic. They're just incredible at computer graphics, and the artistry that they have is just really quite wonderful. And so we chose this Paragon character study as the topic, as the demo for the 1080, because it pushed the limits of any graphics card. And 1080 could barely deliver a performance, if you recalled, that didn't drop frames every now and then on a 60 hertz monitor. And this particular image, this particular demo, uses physically accurate rendering of materials. The skin is rendered beautifully with subsurface scattering. So many different lights to create the effect of global illumination. The shadows are beautiful. The amount of geometry is just extraordinary. All of it turned into an incredibly great test for the state-of-art computer graphics. Now, what you're going to see is Paragon, the Paragon viewer, the character viewer, and it's going to be running basically silky smooth. It's 35% faster than what you saw last year on a 1080, and I'll tell you a bit more about it, but just take it in, how beautiful it is when something is just utterly silky smooth. Let's play it. Is that amazing? Well over 100 frames per second, 35% faster than 1080, beautiful shaders, depth of field effects, beautiful lighting, wonderfully shadowed, great special effects with depth of field. It looks so beautiful, so silky smooth. This is the way computer graphics ought to be. The question is, what were we running at? We're cooking along at 2 gigahertz, and the temperature of the card is 66 degrees C. This is out of the box, GTX 1080 Ti, stock cooler. One of the things that we did was we improved the power delivery system of this 250 amp card with its 7-phase switching power supply. The current that we deliver is lightning fast, and it's really, really stable. And the second thing that we did was we improved the cooler so that we can now have twice as much surface area, and as a result, the engineering of this graphics card makes it super overclockable. Coming out of the box, the stock out of the box, 1080 Ti is 35% faster than 1080. The stock out of the box is faster than a Titan X. And with the overclocking headroom that we provide, you can get another 15, 18, 20%. Isn't that amazing, guys? Thank you. The ultimate GeForce 1080 Ti, 35% faster than 1080, faster than Titan X, and then overclocked just now to over 2 gigahertz with an out-of-the-box stock fan. And all of that for $699. And for $699, don't throw your wallets up here. For $699, and the even better piece of news is it's coming next week. Now, guys, this is not just an announcement. We are in full production. 1080 Ti, in fact, is all around you. Ladies and gentlemen, why don't we now let all of you enjoy 1080 Ti. We have a whole bunch of PCs built up. We have VR sets built up. You can enjoy 1080 Ti right now, tonight. And so I hope all of you hang around so that we can all hang out together and play with the latest, the best, the ultimate GeForce. Thank you all for coming.